The Packers have a lot to get done and not much time to do it. Plus, Mock Draft Monday.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. You can follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen of the day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. The legal tampering period of free agency starts today. In fact, by the time you listen to this, it might already be noon Eastern, which means the legal tampering period has opened. This is where teams can engage with agents and players on new contracts before the league year officially starts. Now, the worst kept secret in the NFL is that this is already happening. And it starts really at the combine, when teams meet with agents and people from other teams, and they get a sense of what's going on, who's going to get what, who's going where, and you get a sense of the market. You get a sense of the lay of the land, as it were, to try and figure out, okay, what is the appetite going to be? Are there going to be a lot of receivers being signed in this draft class? Is it a QB-rich draft class? Is it a free agent class that's got a lot of offensive line in it? And how does the draft affect free agency? All that stuff. You get a sense, and the markets start to materialize, and let's be honest, there are tampering conversations. Teams are speaking to agents. They're trying to get a feel for what's going on. And frankly, it's fine. It doesn't really matter. There is no problem with fairness because, frankly, everyone is doing it. And everyone just understands, okay, it's the combine. The combine is when this all kicks off. Officially, it starts today. The problem for the Green Bay Packers is, yes, we know Aaron Rodgers is coming back. He's going to play for the team. He has said as much. We don't know what that contract is going to look like. Davante Adams playing on the franchise tag right now. That's $20 million as a cap hold for the Packers. They are $40 million over the cap. Okay, you can save a lot of that by getting a deal done with Davante. Now, he's not going to count zero, but you can probably cut that number in half or more, depending on what a new deal looks. Probably not more, but you can cut it in half, depending on what a new deal looks like here and how you're able to structure that if you can get one done in the next couple days. Aaron Rodgers, $46+ million on the cap. You can probably cut that number by 15 or even 20 million. And all of a sudden, you're in a much better position. You say 15 was Zadarius Smith. All of a sudden, you're there. You're under. But that's a lot to ask. Now, we are pretty confident in two of those things happening by the new league year deadline. We're pretty sure Zadarius Smith is going to be cut. And we are pretty sure that the Packers will get a contract with Aaron Rodgers done. Rodgers has said he's coming back. So we can be more sure of that than almost anything else we can be even mildly sure of when it comes to this Packers offseason. So they're going to save a bunch of money there. If you can get the Davante Adams thing done, you release Zadarius Smith, now you're in pretty good position, frankly, to figure this out. Extension with Jair Alexander, an extension with Preston Smith. What do you do with Randall Cobb? How do you handle Billy Turner? This is a lot that still has to get done. And unfortunately for the Packers, if they want to do all that stuff and be players in the free agent market, you can kiss the first wave of free agency goodbye. Now, the Packers probably didn't have the money to really be players in the first wave. The first wave It's the J.C. Jacksons. It's the top of market guys. It's the Chandler Joneses. It's the Stephon Gilmores. Those are the guys who are going to go in the first couple days of free agency, who are going to go in the tampering period window. And Green Bay was just never going to play in those waters. But if you're behind, you're behind. And if you have to do all of this stuff and you can't get in to at least make some calls or appear to make some calls to try and figure out what could be done, you're behind. Now, the reporting from ESPN over the weekend is that the Packers do essentially whatever it takes to keep Devondre Campbell. They are resolute in finding a way to bring him back. He is viewed as a core piece to this team. And he tweeted over the weekend, the tape doesn't lie. Maybe that is a message for management. Maybe that is just a celebration of his play. Maybe that is just a truism because the tape does not, in fact, lie. So that's where the Packers stand. How can they fix it? Well, you get the deal done with Rodgers. And there were a lot of people who last week were pushing back on this idea that Rodgers is dragging this out. And I'm not saying he's dragging it out, but the fact that there is no contract yet. The take was that, I think the most compelling take was, well, he's not dragging it out unless and until his non-decision impacts Green Bay's ability to do other things, to make other roster choices. We're there. We're there because they are not going to be able to engage in the tampering period unless a bunch of stuff happens between the recording of this late on Sunday night and the middle of the day on Monday. So they've got a lot of things that they need to work out just internally before they can even set their sights on what's going on outside of their building. Are there players that they have interest in? I've already heard their interest in improving their defensive front, defensive line in particular. Some players out there that they could be interested in, some mutual interest. And I do think the Packers are going to be looking to do that. You can do it relatively inexpensively, usually with the defensive linemen, if you're not looking at the J.J. Watts of the world. And there are guys who fit that bill. Certainly some guys in the draft as well who fit that bill. So the Packers, according to ESPN, have two plans. One with Rodgers, one without. Okay. Activate the with Rodgers plan. So are we just going to get an avalanche of signings, of moves? Zadarius Smith, Alan Lazard, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Randall Cobb. Like, is it just going to be one big press release? And we find out, okay, this is the new team. It is all a little bizarre that we haven't heard anything, that they haven't said anything about Zadarius Smith's future. We don't know anything about the status of Preston Smith, of Jair Alexander. We got some hints on the Jair Alexander front. They're working on that new deal. Where do you figure this out in time to actually try and make your team better? Now, maybe the Packers are just like, look, the best way to make this team better is to bring everyone back, to try and make some bargain basement Devondre Campbell type signings and not expect them to be Devondre Campbell, but just some guys that you can bring in to steady the ship. You know, maybe a Will Compton type who can come in and play special teams and, you know, give you a little something and just trying to improve this team on the margins, to bank on internal growth. You know, the development of Eric Stokes, the development of Amari Rodgers, the development of A.J. Dillon, of Josiah DeGuara, of Alan Lazard, of Royce Newman, of John Runyon Jr., of Rashawn Gary, of Darnell Savage, to elevate this team moving forward. You bring back all of your core pieces. And, I think that's actually a very reasonable way to be looking at it. How much is this holding pattern that they're in with the combination really of Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers? And then we can add in Devondre Campbell because he is the other big domino for them. He is their priority. That's their big three this offseason in terms of guys who could have potentially walked who they would like to have back. That's the three guys that they're focused on. I think they're willing to say, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, you're going to get 10, maybe 12 million on the open market. Enjoy Jacksonville. Green Bay just is probably not going to be able to wade into the deep end of that pool. And that's okay. He can go in and get his money and hopefully have a successful career somewhere else. Great guy. Wish him nothing but the best. Everything is in a bit of a holding pattern here. And it's a little similar to last year when the Packers were trying to get under the cap and Rodgers did not want to restructure. He wanted a new deal. And the Packers were like, screw that. And so they did all of these things with other guys' cap numbers that have created a problem that persists with this team. And now they're having to deal with it because they have to deal with the Rodgers contract first and foremost. I would expect that we get an announcement about that soon, but I've been expecting announcements about this soon for weeks. So I can't even get in the prediction game on this. No one seems to really know what's going on. They're hammering out the details, presumably. Rodgers is not getting cold feet about coming back to the Packers, presumably. But are we sure? Everything has to be on the table here, doesn't it? Until it's done, it's not done. And so the Packers and Aaron Rodgers and everyone, for everyone's sake, this needs to get done as soon as possible. All right, we're going to get to our mock draft Monday coming up. But before we do, let's talk to our friends at Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. It's the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. The new Built Puffs. I love these things. And if you haven't tasted them, you should check them out. It is protein-infused marshmallows inside chocolate. It's unbelievable. They've got great flavors. Churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. They're so tasty, so easy to eat. So many protein bars are gross and chalky and chewy and difficult to chew. Built, you actually want to chew. You actually enjoy eating them. Go to built.com and you can scroll through the macros chart for yourself. You'll be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb. In the traditional Built bars, they've got your classic flavors: mint brownie, coconut almond, white chocolate cookies, and cream. They're all amazing, all delicious. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. So mock draft Monday. Our buddies over at Locked On NFL Draft have put together a mock draft of the first round. They have the Packers taking Jahan Dotson. I have a long-standing hill that I am going to die on, and that is that Jahan Dotson is not a Packers type. I don't think he's a first-round player, and so I'm not into that pick. I understand why it's being made. They just drafted a small guy to play the slot. They just drafted Amari Rodgers. And I think that is a niche enough position that you have to give him the chance to try and show some improvement. And maybe they bring back Randall Cobb. I don't think that's out of the conversation by any means. And so I think it is premature to get off that. If they're going to draft a receiver, I think it's going to be a bigger body type. Hopefully someone with some speed. I did a mock, and we are going to talk about those guys because this is a really fun mock. And I think this is, if I'm going to put together a best case scenario for Green Bay, and I didn't even go into it thinking about this. This is just sort of how the board broke for me. But I'm going to lay this out, and I think it makes a lot of sense. At 28, I have Zion Johnson, guard, center from Boston College. I think he can play either. But Josh Myers is your center, so he's gonna play guard. What someone like Zion Johnson, by the way, relative athletic score over 9. He's a incredible athlete, a great kid, a powerful, dynamic blocker. And what he would allow you to do is, if you need to move on from Billy Turner, you can move Elton Jenkins to right tackle, no problem. Or if you need to move Elton Jenkins, you want to move Elton Jenkins to right tackle, you can move Billy Turner to right guard. If you don't see the requisite growth that you want to see from Rice Newman. Lucas Patrick's future with this team is in question. Wouldn't be surprised if he's not back with them. Royce Newman showed some growth after showing a lot of potential early in training camp and in the process, but he has to prove it. And John Runyon Jr. was solid last year for the Packers. Someone like Zion has Elton Jenkins-like ability and potential. And to have someone like that in your room, someone who can play center like Elton Jenkins can. Josh Myers has some injury history. It'd be really nice to have a versatile player like Zion in your offensive line room that gives you a ton of flexibility. And we know Aaron Rodgers, pressure versus not pressure, that is a huge difference. He just looks so different. The last 2 years, the difference in when he's been pressured and when he's been clean. He's an MVP when he's clean, and he's like a bottom 5 quarterback when pressured. Keep him clean, and you'll be fine. We saw it in the playoff game. The offensive line started to struggle. He started to see ghosts, and it got ugly. If you can protect him, they're going to win so many games. So you don't just need good health, which you do, but you need good depth. And especially you got your new OC as an offensive line coach. Someone like Zion Johnson, I think, gives you a lot of flexibility in that spot. In the second round, this is where people are going to pull away. I don't like mocks that seem unrealistic, but George Pickens is the pick here at 59. And I understand there's going to be a lot of people who go, well, he's a first-round talent. Well, I agree he's a first-round talent, but he's also coming off a serious injury. He did not produce high-volume numbers over the last 2 seasons. And so if you're an NFL team, I think there are going to be questions about his readiness to compete right away in the NFL. He's got deep speed. Ran in the 4.4s at the combine. We're talking about, just months after ACL surgery. I think he's still working his way back from that. He's 6'3", over 200 pounds, and can run. He's a Packers type all day and broke out early. I've got a piece coming on Packers types at receiver, and this is a draft that does not have very many Packers types, but I think the second round is the sweet spot here. Can you get Christian Watson in the second? Maybe you need to move up to get him. Fine, do that. George Pickens. Some of these guys in the second, if you can't get someone in the first, I do think the first round is where you probably, if you want a receiver and you want a receiver badly, you're probably going to need to get, I could have taken Olave, by the way, at 28. But I was just like, you know what? The value of Zion, too good to pass up. And I've already done the receiver thing. We had just done that, I think. Either the last one or the one before that. Plus, Jahan Dotson was the pick in Eric Crocker and Ryan Tracy's mock for Locked On NFL Draft. So I wanted to give it a little bit different feel and just say, okay, this is a different way that this can go. Traditionally, the value of receivers is in the second round. That's your best value. That's the Packers. That's where they live, is day 2 receivers. Randall Cobb, Davante Adams, James Jones, Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson. The list goes on and on. And I think some of these guys will probably fall just because there's so much depth at other spots. And over the last couple of years, everyone has taken these receivers. And so how many teams are looking at it as a high-level need? I think that factors in here as well. In the third, Nick Bonito from Oklahoma, pass rusher, edge guy, not the traditional size that Green Bay wants, but we are thinking of size from a Mike Pettin lens. Bonito wouldn't be the kind of size that Mike Pettin would traditionally want. But Joe Barry, the Rams under Brandon Staley, they played with some lighter edges out there. Leonard Floyd, Uchenna Nwosu. Like they didn't have a bunch of just like hulking guys. Zadarius Smith and Rashawn Gary are not all the types that they had out there. I think outstanding athlete, over 9 relative athletic score, 6'3", 250, and can move and can play with force. Some people think that he could play off the ball if he needed to. And so I think they need to add some edge depth. If you have to move on from one of the Smiths, they just really have 2 guys that you feel good about. So I'm consistently going to try and find an edge in the top 100. The value is just going to fall off after that. You need, with pass rushers, you need to bank on talent and athletic gifts. And so you need to be looking at those guys in the top 100, first, second, third. After that, you're really stretching, because if they had really great athletic tools, they would have gone higher if they also had production. So now you're going, okay, do I want to bet on a productive, unathletic player to be an outlier, or do I want to try and take a guy with a bunch of tools who's never produced and try and turn him into someone who can produce? Well, I think someone like Nick Bonito threads that needle, and you can get good value there. At 130, I have Jelani Woods, the tight end from Virginia. Ran in the 4.5s at the combine. He's big. He can run. He can block. I think he'd be a great fit for Green Bay. My view on tight end is just take great athletes in the 3rd or 4th or 5th round every year until you have 2 you really like. Just do it every year. Because worst case, you have a special teams contributor. A really good athlete with size, with strength, who can block, who can tackle, who can give you something on every team that you need them to be on. And then whatever receiving ability they can give you is upside. And maybe you hit on a Julius Thomas, a Jimmy Graham, George Kittle. I mean, we've seen this over and over. Bet on the athletic traits with tight ends and keep doing it. And, you know, the last 2 guys that the Packers have drafted, neither Jay Sternberger nor Josiah DeGuara were elite athletes by testing standards. And so if you can get some of those guys, I think you give yourself a better chance to hit a home run. I liked Jay Sternberger a lot as a player. I liked Josiah DeGuara a lot as a player, especially coming out of the draft. I don't know that I would say either of them had the kind of physical skill and tools that Jelani Woods did. Just keep trying to find those guys. I understand Brian Gutekunst has tried a bunch. Keep trying until you hit, because again, worst case, you're going to get a special teams player. Worst case. And on day 3 or late on day 2, 3rd, 4th, 5th, that's fine. That's fine. Like, I think Oren Burks for a 3rd round pick, I know they had to trade up to get him, but a 3rd round pick that who becomes a core special teamer for you. The Packers probably aren't going to pay him, but becomes a core special teams player for you. That's fine. That's fine. You'd rather it be in the 4th or the 5th round, but a core special teamer and quality backup, that's probably what you're going to get in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. Bet on athletic tools, because that gives them the chance to hit big, to hit that home run. That's what you want. And I think someone like Jelani Woods could give them that. And then I really just wanted a defensive lineman. And so I got Otito Ogbonna from UCLA, 29 reps on the bench. He's huge, 320, 330, big body run defender. And this is going to be a theme of the offseason. I don't think the Packers have a lot of quote unquote needs. So there's going to be a lot of luxury picks. I think this is one of them. But if you want to play a lot of light boxes, and the Packers do, you want to play a lot of nickel, you need to give Kenny Clark some help. You want to give him some opportunities to play off the nose. And you want to give him some opportunities to just be fresh for 3rd downs. Just give him a chance. And he can be, he can grab a couple more sacks a season. He can be an all-pro type of impact interior defender if you can get something more from TJ Slayton in year 2 and then bring in another running mate for him. This is the range where I really like the value. You're probably going to get a one-dimensional player, although I think TJ Slayton has more upside than just being a one-dimensional player that they were able to get on day 3 last year. This would be the same kind of thing. You get a big run stuffer. You don't have to pay Tyler Lancaster. You get a rookie to come in, some fresh legs, some fresh blood, and bolster that defensive front. To then get 2 pass catchers at positions of not need, but of like an outstanding interior offensive lineman, and then to bolster your front with an edge rusher and an interior defender, you're hitting all the high points. And you're creating good balance on your football team. And I think that is always a good position to be in, especially when you're trying to compete for titles. All right, we're going to talk about the Packers' place in the NFC now that a certain quarterback in Florida is back. but we'll do that in just a second. Today's episode brought to you by BetOnline. It's that time of year again. College basketball's tournament is finally upon us. From the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just baseball. BetOnline, not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Las Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. Now go make your second listen, Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and front offices. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. I want to just bring this up. So Tom Brady's on retiring. We think. Maybe. No, he says he's coming back, but he also said he was walking away. And the odds moved. And the odds moved in a big way. Tampa, depending on where you look, is now the favorite in the NFC. The Packers had been the favorite. I don't get that. The Packers, now we need to see the deal. We need to see the Rodgers sign the contract, Adams get the extension, Davante Campbell come back. But if they can get those big things, to me, they're the favorite. Tampa, Ali Marpet retired. Ryan Jensen is a free agent. And by the way, Ali Marpet is saying he's staying retired. Carlton Davis, they're going to let walk, it looks like. He's going to get just too much money for them. Chris Godwin's on the franchise tag. They lost Antonio Brown. They don't really have a replacement there. Tyler Johnson, for as much as the dynasty community likes him, has not been a productive NFL player over the course of his career. And it's another year older for Shaq Barrett, another year older for Ndamukong Suh, another year older for Jason Pierre-Paul, another year older for Levante David. So I just don't see how you can put the Bucs in front of the Rams. Let's just start there. Forget the Packers. Forget the whatever charges of homerism you want to level at me. They don't deserve to be in front of the Rams. Let's start there. But then I just don't see, unless it's just like a scar tissue thing, they don't have a better team than Green Bay does. Green Bay had a better team last year, and they would presumably have a better team. Now, we'll see how it shakes out, obviously, but they would have a better team this year, and they both play in crap divisions. So they're going to be fighting it out for the 1 seed. The Rams are going to be in a much tougher division. It's going to be between Green Bay and Tampa for the 1 seed. The odds are close enough. It's like 3-1 or 3 plus 350 to win the NFC for those two teams. So it's close. And maybe when the Rodgers news becomes official and Davante signs the extension and all that stuff, that it swings back the other way. I think part of this is just the way odds work. It's a Tom Brady hedge. He's as public gets. But I don't get this. I think Green Bay is still ahead of Tampa in the hierarchy, but I do understand the argument of, hey, look, until the Packers prove it, and I've said this, until the Packers prove that they can make the season end a different way, we can't trust that it's going to. And so I get it from that standpoint, but from just a pure talent standpoint, I don't see it. I don't think Tampa is a better team. Could you make the case they have a better odds to win the title? Yeah, I think you can. But now you're engaging in some mental gymnastics that I don't know that I'm willing to engage in. So just something to think about as we move forward here. All right, the tampering period opens, new league year in a couple days, 4 Eastern on March 16th. And so this is going to be a wild week. We'll be doing emergency podcasts for big news. I don't think a Rodgers deal will be big enough news for it, but if the Packers sign someone, of course, that will be big enough news. An extension with either Davante Adams or Davante Campbell will certainly warrant that. So we'll be going live on YouTube. Go subscribe to the Locked On Packers YouTube, and then that will show up in your podcast feed the next day. And if we have to do a couple of them, we'll do a couple of them, and it'll be great. And it'll be a lot of fun. And 2 years ago, we had to do a couple of them. So we will keep it going. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to hit us up on the Locked On Packers fan hotline, you can do that 920-341-3775 to stay Locked On Packers.